OYIMers, my name is Alveena and I am representative of the 1 year in mission team representing the Southern Africa Indian Ocean Division, otherwise known as SID. Welcome to the university. I have been part of the 1 year in mission program since 2013. Today, I'd like to share with you the role of an OYIM leader. We're going to study different aspects of a good leader taken from Matthew 23 verses 1 to 39. There are 7 characteristics in this Bible verse that all of us should encompass. Number 1, integrity. Jesus attacks hypocrisy of the religious leaders from verses 3 to 4. He says they do not practice what they preach. They tie up heavy loads and put them on the people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to lift a finger or to move them. Integrity is the opposite of this. It means practicing what you preach and making sure that your words lift up people rather than weighing them down. As an OYIM leader, you will be responsible for your team. Walk with integrity. Don't ask your team members to do something that you aren't willing to do. The next point is authenticity. Jesus attacks their superficiality in verses 5 to 7. He says to them, "Everything you do is done for others to see, but what matters is when nobody is looking." And that's when Jesus is looking at our hearts. Authenticity. As an OYIM leader, we ask you to be true to who you are. Remember, you've been called to be a leader, not by your division or your union. You have been called by God and placed in this position. So lead your team with authenticity. The next is humility, which is a very important aspect of a leader. Jesus warns against loving titles and recognition. Be on your guard so that you are not entitled by prominent positions, public flattery, and being given titles to one sort of another. Jesus warns, don't let people do that to you or put you on a pedestal. This is such temptation, but Jesus says, for those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. As I've just said, you've been called by God. Remember, your purpose is to shine for Jesus. You are in an area where you need to share Jesus with all the community members and draw them closer to God. Do it with humbleness and humility. Always seek to exalt Jesus rather than yourself. The fourth is compassion. Jesus attacks the religious leaders for putting stumbling blocks in the ways of others, verses 13 to 15. He says, "You shut the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. You yourselves do not enter, nor will you let those enter who are trying." Verse 13. Leaders do not have the opposite spirit, one that is open and welcoming to everyone. Jesus himself sets an example of compassion. He says, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how often I have longed to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings." Verse 37. Act with compassion. There will be people in your area that you are situated in that will have major needs of sanitation, needs of food, needs of comfort and encouragement. Spend quality time with people in your community. As they get to know you, they will get to know Jesus. The next is vision. Leaders should have big vision, and that's why you're sitting where you are. With the vision of Pastor Wilson, who's the president of our World Church, and Pastor Gary Blanchard, who is the World Youth Director, they have big vision for 1 year in mission, and therefore we're rolling out 1 year in mission university to all that will be able to engage in this amazing program. Back to vision. Jesus attacks the small-mindedness and pettiness of a religious leader, verses 16 to 22. The ridiculous hair splitting. They could not see the wood for the trees. Concentrate on the important issues. Pray for God's vision and don't be sidetracked. Ask God to give you a vision that is so big, without Him, it will be impossible. Focus. Focus on what really matters. Verses 23 to 24. Avoid getting caught up with the minor details and becoming legalistic. Jesus says you strain out a gnat but swallow a camel. Rather focus on what is more important: justice, mercy, and faithfulness. Fight against injustice. Champion the poor. Demonstrate faithfulness in your relationships with your family and others. Focus on what 1 year in mission is and what it means for your team. As an OYIM leader, you will be responsible for ensuring your team is focused on the plan that you've put together at the beginning of your training. Focused so that you know your end goal, which will always be to allow Jesus to shine. And the last aspect of a good leader would be generosity. This is the opposite of greed and self-indulgence, which Jesus decries, verses 25 to 28. Their inner life is so different from their outer life. Jesus calls you to be yourself, for the inside to be like the outside. Remember, Jesus knows our innermost being. He knows everything we do when we're in front of people or when we are alone in our rooms or find ourselves alone in a space. Jesus sees it all. Be generous, be kind. Remember, as the OYIM leader, you are responsible for your team. Take a hold of them. Concentrate on who struggles or who has development areas that you need to be able to engage and help them grow as you grow as a leader. These are extremely high standards and very hard to attain. Jesus' words here, as the woes come to climax, verses 29 to 36, are some of the strongest to come from his mouth. It is important to note that they were not addressed to ordinary people. Jesus was criticizing very powerful leaders who were seeking to exalt themselves and who shut the door of the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. Don't use the words of Jesus as an excuse to berate ordinary people or even leaders who are genuinely seeking to point people to Jesus. I need to direct them at myself. These are challenging words, but the challenge should not be directed at the wrong people. What is so amazing about Jesus' words is that it's humanly speaking. He was in a position of great weakness, and yet he was not afraid to take on the powers of his day. We should pray, Lord, forgive us for the times when we have failed in these areas of leadership. Help us to lead a life of integrity, authenticity, humility, compassion, vision, focus, and generosity. Help us to have the same concern for our city as you had for yours. As the OYIM leader, I pray that God will bless you as you lead your team. Remember, even though you are a leader, you need to walk with your team. It's not a us versus them. It will be a journey that you will be responsible for, and you have the title as a leader because God has placed you in that position. I pray that you and your team will be blessed in a mighty way. Now that you've watched the video on the role of a leader, there's a worksheet for you to complete. I ask that you take time to complete this worksheet as a team and that you will be able to share ideas and understand the role of leaders. Remember, there may only be one leader or two leaders, but we know that every single one of you has been called to lead in the 1 Year in Mission program. And when you go back home, you will serve as leaders for the 1 Year in Mission program. Remember, take photos and hashtag 1 Year in Mission or OYIM and contact us on Facebook or other social platforms so we can communicate and engage with you. All this information will be saved on youth.adventist.org. We pray that God will bless you and your 1 Year in Mission team as you share Jesus in the areas He has placed you.